Good evening and welcome to the September 12th meeting of the Board of School Trustees for Fort Wayne Community Schools. We'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our roll call of members.
Good evening, Steve Corona from the 5th District.
Julie Hollingsworth, District 1.
Jennifer Mathias, District 2.
Maria Norman, Member at Large.
Riley Booker, 4th District.
Noah Smith, 3rd District.
I'm Ann Duff, Member at Large, and to my left is Angela Filler, our Clerk of the Board, and Dr. Daniel, our Superintendent. This evening, we will begin with our awards and recognition. We have our Teachers of the Year and our Employees of the Year to recognize this evening. But first, we will show a Teacher of the Year video and then recognize them in person. Thank you. Okay. It is recommended that the board recognize the district's 2022-23 Teacher of the Year finalists. Each year, Fort Wayne Community Schools requests nominations from principals for the Teacher of the Year recognition. In the spring of 2022, Fort Wayne Community Schools received more than 40 applications and narrowed them down to 10 finalists who were then interviewed by the committee. 2 were chosen as the 22-23 FWCS Teacher of the Year winners. We would like to formally recognize the finalists for their hard work and dedication to the students of the district. And these are our nominees: Lindsay Baker, kindergarten teacher, Irwin Elementary; and Erin Eastham, third grade teacher at Maplewood Elementary. Rochelle Lofgren, 4th grade teacher, Harrison Hill Elementary. Matthew Murtis, social studies teacher, Northside High School. Denise Oakes, English teacher, Southside High School. And Colleen Phillips, music teacher, previously at Lane Middle School, but now at Memorial Park Middle School. And Eric Toy, computer science teacher, New Tech Academy at Wayne High School. Did I forget Anna, or did I say her? Is she out there?
I don't think you said her, but she's not here.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, also Anna Zolkowski, 2nd grade teacher, Bloomingdale Elementary. Steve, would you like to do the Teacher of the Year for 2022?
Sure. It's recommended that the board recognize Weiser Park Elementary School teacher Carolyn Rosado and Northrop High School teacher Tom Maupin as the district's 2022-2023 Teacher of the Year winners. And they're at the back of the room, and they're coming forward to be greeted by the superintendent. Just a little background. Again, Carolyn is a 5th grade teacher at Weiser Park, and Tom is choir director, although I was a little confused by the video because I was not sure if we were recognizing you for music or your dance steps. But congratulations. We're honored to have you as teachers in our district.
And now we will see a video for our Employee of the Year.
Again, I just try to come to work and really not focus on me, but kind of concern myself with, coming in here and loving on kids and encouraging them and, supporting my staff here at the school. So it's the kids. I enjoy working with the kids. I get to see them from greeting them in the daytime to sending them off in the afternoon, whatever. It's the kids. I enjoy working with them, Just the opportunity to be able to have some type of impact in their lives. When I was in school, it was the attendance person, it was the media person, it was my basketball coach, it was those kind of employees that had the impact on my life. So I'm just trying to pay it forward, if you will. I think the organization, school corporation, is so huge that, no matter what, in the local family, you embody the family as a whole. So no matter when we have an opportunity to get to our meetings, to see other your co-laborers and co-workers that are just really working just as hard as you or whatever. So just an opportunity to I say we have a huge family. I think that's a goal for the district in itself to embody working and serving our kids and our families and our local community. So I think that's special. It's an awesome school. I mean, it's one of the smaller ones in the district, but small school, but I think we have a huge impact in our community for the team members that we have, the teachers, they work hard, parents, come and support, and again, just great leadership here. So we have an awesome community here locally at Studi Elementary, so I'm excited to be a part of it.
All right, thank you. Julie, would you like to do this recommendation?
Yeah. So it's recommended that the board recognize the district's 2022 Employee of the Year. In the spring of 2022, Fort Wayne Community Schools celebrated its first ever Employee of the Year. For many years, we have recognized teachers, but this new honor also recognizes our non-teaching staff to honor their dedication and their contributions to students in our district. 16 staff members were nominated for the honor, and a committee reviewed those nominations and chose Sharon McGee, Secretary Treasurer at Studi Elementary School, as the 2022. Mrs. McGee has been with Fort Wayne Community Schools for 17 years, including 13 at Studi. Congratulations.
Okay, we had a reception for the Teachers and Employees of the Year before our board meeting this evening, and that was our first reception like that we've had since COVID, so that was really nice getting to see everyone in person, and the ANTHA students had a nice little spread for us, so thank you to them as well.
And can we mention too, I think the Bar Street Grill is open for lunches Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from about 11:30 to 1:30, is that right? So anybody out there, go out and have lunch at the Bar Street.
Very
good. Grill and Cafe.
Wonderful. Okay, and next is our consent agenda, which includes the approval of our minutes from the August 26th meeting, vouchers and payroll, and our personnel report. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Noah. All in favor?
Aye.
Dr. Daniels, anything you wanted to mention?
Just want to remind people that we increased our substitute pay rate, so if you're a substitute in Allen County, it pays to work in FWCS.
Absolutely. We can use you. Okay, we'll move on to our new business then. Our first recommendation is outdoor classroom learning equipment. It is recommended that the board approve the purchase of outdoor classroom learning equipment for Memorial Park Middle School, Irwin Elementary School, and Whitney Young Early Childhood Center from Recreation Insights of Fisher, Indiana, for $308,457. This purchase will provide outdoor classroom seating, shade structures, and other learning equipment for new outdoor classroom areas. The equipment will be installed during the summer of 2023 in conjunction with the site work needed to create the outdoor learning areas at each building. FWCS was able to secure pricing that is below pricing available through the Omnia National Purchasing Cooperative. Indiana law does not require public bidding for purchases made at or below approved cooperative purchasing entities. Funding will be made from the Magnet Grant, and questions will be addressed by Brad Crozier, principal of Memorial Park, Mary Canary, principal at Irwin, and Claire Paul, principal at Whitney Young, and Kara Froning, director for secondary education. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
No motion.
Second.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Maria. And do you have any questions for these people?
Can you tell us a little bit about what this is and what it'll look like physically? Kind of curious what an outdoor classroom looks like.
And what it will be used for. Exactly.
I'll speak for Memorial Park. Mr. Crozier had to leave, but then I'll let our two principals share. They have much bigger projects at their two schools, and Heather Krebs is here to assist us with any of those other questions you might have. But the project at Memorial Park this is a small part of an outdoor classroom where we're purchasing tables and 2 trash cans actually as part of the order. And if you're familiar with Memorial Park, it's out behind the school near their visitors entrance. It's just one location for some outdoor classroom space. And then we are actually in the process of working on, not in this purchase tonight, but you'll hear us later, because this is a small part of an outdoor classroom where we're working on an engineering lab. And that's a huge project that'll come up a little bit later.
So the outdoor space, is it just, well, let's just have a change of scenery and go outdoors, or is there certain things that they plan to do outdoors?
As we continue the planning with the other space, we hope to combine and use them as actual classroom spaces when we can get outside. Some of this started originally with and near the end of COVID, where we need some of those alternative learning spaces to work collaboratively too. So in the event of other events, we always have that outdoor space available too.
Thank you.
But I'll let them speak to the bigger project.
So at Irwin, what we're most excited about is really just bringing learning to life by being able to go out there, have some apple trees so the kindergarten students will see the life cycle of an apple. Water tables out there to work on erosion and the movement of water. And just really trying to bring what we do every day in the classroom to an everyday experience for kids outside. So with that, there will be tables and some sunshade. And I really just hope to create an oasis within our urban district next to the school so the kids can be immersed in nature in a very unique way. So
Will there be roofing to this?
they have some shade, like the
Awning?
yeah, the sails, the shade sails for the students, and then little tables and stuff for them to work outside in. So my big project will be the bug and insect hotel that I'm working on, because that will bring us the most with big magnifying glasses. So, yeah, so we're very excited.
But Mary, you don't want those in school?
No, I'm gonna have a special spot outside with lots of great observers, so.
I'm going to let Mary handle the bugs, but we're combining our philosophy of the Reggio Emilia approach and STEAM, and so we're incorporating a lot of the creativity elements, such as musical instruments. We'll have outdoor chalkboards, outdoor seating for our stage area. We'll have some of the sunshade sails as well, and some water tables and different things like that as well. So it's pretty similar to what Earn will have.
So does that have to be moved in and moved out each day and night, or?
No, those will be outside.
permanent?
Yep. Yes,
So
they
weather
will.
resistant and
Weather
waterproof?
resistant, yes.
Hurricane proof and all that?
Well, hopefully we don't have to plan for that.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Our next one, the high ability grant, Jennifer?
It is recommended that the board approve the application for and acceptance of a high ability grant from the Indiana Department of Education in the amount of $178,287 for the 2022-2023 school year. The state of Indiana provides non-competitive funds for districts to address the learning needs of high ability students. Currently, high ability services are delivered through the efforts of classroom teachers. The overall program is coordinated by Amelia, I never get your last name right. Say it again. Flieger. I apologize. High ability dual credit advanced placement and internship manager. Questions will be answered by Amelia.
Thank you.
Next numbers.
All in, what am I supposed to say? Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
Or yes, I motion. Well, you got me confused. I make a motion, we approve, so.
Thank you, Noah.
Second.
Thank you, Maria. Any questions for Amelia?
How many kids are you hoping to service with this, Amelia?
Currently, we have 2,453. We just graduated 261 seniors, and so our kindergarten students will be tested after the first of the year, but hopefully we'll have an increase this year as well. I would love to be at 2,600 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Maria, Imagine Learning.
It is recommended that the board approve the purchase of Imagine Learning site and concurrent licenses to support credit recovery and acceleration using a virtual platform. Total cost for the 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25 school years for all site licenses for high schools and concurrent licenses for middle schools amount to $368,366.62. Imagine Learning, formerly Edgenuity, is a self-paced learning system that allows students to spend more time on what they need and less time on content that they have already mastered. Before each lesson, students take a quiz to assess mastery of the content. If students meet the district's passing threshold, they can place out of content and accelerate through the lessons. All of the content is eventually revisited on a cumulative unit exam. And Amelia Flieger is here to answer questions, and also Shanita Bolton.
Thank you, Maria. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
I move approval.
Thank you, Raleigh.
Second.
Thank you, Julie. And questions for Amelia?
What was the usage of this service last year?
We used it with a majority throughout the school year for credit recovery, but also in our summer school programming where students were able to accelerate through courses that they wanted to complete, as well as for credit recovery purposes also.
And how many students?
I do not have that number off the top
Roughly?
of my head. Joe, do you? Not for certain. I will find a number for you.
Okay.
And get that for you.
All right, great.
Is our contract up, or is it just,
My understanding is that we've had a yearly contract, and now, because that is up, it's time to renew.
and we like it so much we're doing it for 3 years?
Correct, because it saved our district roughly $68,000 by doing a 3-year contract versus a 1-year contract.
How many years have we been using it then? Just the one?
We've been using it for the last 2 years, I believe.
And do we have proof of the growth of the students? Like, are we seeing progress with our students and how far they've moved with the use of this product?
I can attest to a few students that have used it for acceleration purposes, and there's been no loss of instruction.
But it's also used if I fail geometry first semester. I can do this instead of having to repeat that class the next year.
That's correct.
And so when do the students do this? Like on their own time, or how do they complete
Some
that?
of the pieces, I believe, are on their own time, but then there's also structured time within the high school day for them to be provided with the credit recovery time that's needed in order for them to be successful with the courses that they need.
As a former guidance counselor, I think this is a great way to do the credit recovery, because, back in the olden days, it was repeat that entire course. And so this is wonderful that they get to pick out the pieces where they struggled and master those instead of redoing everything.
So is it only for credit recovery or also for high ability acceleration as well?
It's on a case-by-case basis in regards to the acceleration piece and how that can be used. But yes, it is used for both.
Do you have a sense of the mix of how many kids are using it for recovery? How many? I know you don't have a number of users, but recovery versus acceleration?
In the summer, I know that there were a higher number of individuals that had used it for an acceleration purpose to take care of some courses, but there are a handful right now that are utilizing Edgenuity as an acceleration model with the support of teachers, as well if they have questions over the material that's being covered that they're taking.
This has been a program that we've used for a number of years. It used to be called Edgenuity, and so it's now Imagine, but it has been very helpful in making sure that we have students, as you mentioned, President Duff, that if they fail the class, it gives us an opportunity, because it's an online program, can be done at home, but then you proctor what happens with the exams, but it can be done during the school day, and it has helped a number of our students to be able to graduate and keep up.
Is this some math or English or?
We have a variety of courses. There's math as well as English language arts. There's also an opportunity for some advanced placement courses as well.
Do we have any kind of idea of how many students utilize?
3,500.
To be exact.
Good job, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Is that students or courses?
That is students,
Wow.
And that's middle and high school?
middle and high school.
So like for middle school, would they be able to use it like, kind of like a placement test? Like, I know I can, I'm in 6th grade and I know I can do algebra now or something like that.
Sometimes they can use it as a placement test. It can also be used as a tool where they're compacting the curriculum. So if a student wants to move quicker through material, they can do that. Of course, there's a process that we have to do, you know, in order to accelerate through that. But it can also be used, we've used it for high school credit in middle schools at some of our middle schools where there might be teacher allocations that are not where they need to be. So it really opens up a lot of doors for students to be able to complete coursework that's required for high school.
Awesome.
So 3,500 is a decent number, but we have about 15,000 kids in middle and high school, is that right? So about a fifth. Is it a teacher chooses to use this program, or the kids choose to use? How's this rolled out, and how are we not using it for 15,000 kids, I guess?
Sure, with the credit recovery piece, that's on a case-by-case basis for students that need that support. The acceleration piece really has just kind of come into its own the last probably year, I would say, in how we can utilize that effectively. So more information that's available will definitely, students will be able to access that more.
Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Title III grant. Am I ready for you, Maria?
I just did the last one, but I
Okay.
can do that one.
I'll move on to Raleigh then.
Oh, great. It is recommended that the board approve the acceptance of the Title III grant for the 2022-23 year in the amount of $426,018 from the Indiana Department of Education. Funds from this grant will allow the continuation of a range of supplemental services for the district's English language learners program. The grant supports supplemental instruction materials, professional learning, and family engagement. This non-competitive grant, written by Emily Schwartz-Cairns, Director of ELL, and she is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
I move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Raleigh. Thank you, Noah. And any questions for Emily?
I'll ask you a question, Emily. Other than how your husband's such a good pickleball player, I'll keep on topic. How many kids do we service here on this, roughly?
We're working on getting our definite numbers for this year as we identify new students. This grant is based on last fall's count, which was about 3,400 students. By the end of last school year, we were up above 3,500. We're anticipating a little more than that this year as we get all the data entered.
So about $1,200 per student?
The Title III funding is $111 per student.
Oh, okay, my math. I need Julie's.
Get that decimal in the right place. Yeah, so if only. Yeah, and that one's just supplemental funding, so we can't use it for the required services, so it pays some supplemental services.
Is this something we have to do every year?
The grant
Yeah.
approval, yes. This grant and the NESP grant, which will come up next, our annual allocations.
And it's based on our student population from the prior.
Right, they always
Fall.
take the count of ELL students from the fall before.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and I'll move on to Noah, non-English speaking program grant.
It is recommended the board approve the acceptance of the non-English speaking program grant for 2022 and 23 for the amount of $1,257,111.72 from the Indiana Department of Education. Funds from this grant will allow continuation of a range of services for the district's ELL program. The grant supports ELL personnel, professional learning, instructional materials, and language services, interpreting and translation. This non-competitive grant was written by Emily Schwartz-Kern, and she's also here to answer questions again.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
Move for approval.
Thank you, Julie.
Second.
Thank you, Maria. Any additional questions for Emily?
Sorry, I do have one more. How many interpreters do we utilize in a regular year typically, and where do we have need?
Right, we have about 10 interpreters on staff right now who speak Spanish and Burmese. Some of those are part-time, some are full-time, and then we have a list of a whole lot, I think it's close to 80 interpreters that we can call on an as-needed basis that cover a lot of the other languages. Beyond that, we work with some local agencies, and we have a couple phone and video interpreting services we can call on. So Spanish and Burmese are the largest need, but we have a lot of demand for other languages as well.
And so you're always looking for some help in that area?
Yes, definitely for our as-needed interpreters especially.
And funds from this grant can help pay for those services?
Right.
What do you typically pay an interpreter?
I believe the pay rate is $15 to $20 an hour.
Thank you.
That's for the as-needed interpreters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, change orders. It is recommended that the board approve the following change orders. We have a long list of change orders for different things. Flooring, a dock project, roof replacement, Wayne High School track and field, Northrop West Side project, East Side project, South Side Stadium waterproofing, ventilation, nutrition warehouse. But overall, I believe the change for the grand total of $12,920,815, we've saved $381,443.30. So reasonable allowances and contingencies are included in base bids for most projects because of conditions or fees not specifically known at the time bids are taken. The use of these allowances and contingencies are authorized by the administration only after review by the facilities departments, administrators, and relevant architectural and engineering firms' personnel. To avoid major delays in construction projects, change order decisions are generally required and made prior to an official board meeting. In the event a major change in project scope is needed, a recommendation is made to the board for approval prior to proceeding with the project. And any questions will be directed to Darren Hess. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
I move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Relly. Thank you, Steve. And does anyone have any questions for Darren?
I just got one, Darren. On the South Side Stadium waterproofing, is that the gym or is that the football field?
Yeah, that's the football and track stadium. That was for some additional masonry. It was masonry cleaning, recaulking, sealants.
So it's waterproofing the track, the buildings?
The concrete stadium.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, there's locker rooms underneath it and storage areas.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Darren, you're always welcome when you're saving us money.
Yes. What are you seeing in pricing then? Is this a sign hopefully of things to come with prices going down or?
Well, these were the projects that we just finished up, but we're starting to see some prices starting to level out. So yes, it's, yeah.
All right, thank you, Darren. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, contract amendment for construction manager as constructor, CMC, for the renovation of Wayne High School. I'll give that to Steve.
It is recommended the board approve contract amendment with Hagerman as part of the construction manager as constructor contract for the renovation of Wayne High School as last amended on March 14th of this year. The amendment amount is, I want to make sure I'm reading this. The amendment amount $51,959, and the amended contract amount is $50,030, 160.
50 million.
Million.
50 million, excuse me, I didn't see the dollar sign there, $50,030,160. Project at Wayne consists of architectural, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical renovations. The initial contract was for architectural and engineering services, and also some subsequent amendments we've approved. The amendment package establishes the additional cost due to the discovery of an underground storm line within the footprint of the new elevator shaft at the high school. To resolve the conflict, the elevator orientation had to be changed and the storm line relocated. And you see where the money's coming from, the 2020 School Basic Renewal Restoration and Safety Project.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
Move for approval.
Second.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Noah. And if you have any questions for Darren?
I have a question. So we discovered that there was an underground storm line in the footprint of the elevator shaft. And we moved the elevator orientation, but we still needed to change the storm line?
Correct. We're able to, those two challenges in the way, the depth of it, but also the orientation of the footing. So we were able to shift it a little bit, but the storm sewers still need to be lowered.
Okay. Thank you.
Everything on schedule at Wayne?
For post-pandemic projects, yes.
Oh, yeah?
We're still waiting on windows and HVAC equipment, but we're just moving around, finding stuff to do.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Darren. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, emergency projects. Julie?
It's recommended that the board declare an emergency for the following projects and allocate funds from the emergency allocation within the capital projects plan. At Kikianga, we need to replace a boiler for $29,000. Northwood, replacement of a heat exchanger and a chiller for a little over $18,000. And maintenance operation needs a backhoe to be repaired for $28,410,000 for a total of $75,410.88. The 2022 capital projects plan consists of all capital projects that cost $10,000 or more. New projects over $10,000 determined after approval are required to follow our advertisement and approval requirements of an amended CPP. But the board is allowed to determine that an emergency exists and therefore amends the current CPP without the usual amendment procedures. The operations fund budget includes an appropriation for an emergency capital projects. And Darren is here still to answer any questions, and I hereby declare an emergency.
Good job, Julie. Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
So motion.
Second.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Raleigh. And any questions for Darren?
Darren, I do have a question. So we get the boiler insurance or whatever. So is this a claim when a boiler goes out against our insurance, or how does that whole process work when a boiler goes out?
No, we won't turn this into insurance. Our insurance deductible is much higher than that.
Got it. Okay. And how much is a new backhoe?
I was going to ask that same question.
About 80 to
You know.
90,000.
How much?
80 to 90,000.
Oh, wow. It's a costly repair.
My question is if the boiler is heat or hot water, is that correct?
Correct, yeah, it's hot water heat.
So if Julie had to declare an emergency in winter and it's really cold out and the team goes out there and it's, Kikianga can't have school because it's so bad, we have an emergency of $50,000. Do you have to wait the next board meeting, or how does that process work, out of curiosity?
Well, we actually went ahead and ordered the boiler. We would have completed the repair, and then we come back to the board, we declare the emergency. So we proceed with the emergency repairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, because I don't want to have to wait for Julie to declare emergencies, right?
Anything else for Darren? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Jennifer, the Esser Boiler and Chiller Replacement Project.
It is recommended that the board approve the following construction contract for Esser boiler and chiller replacement projects for 2023. Current mechanical with a total contract of $2,250,000. Oh, there was a bargain a few minutes ago. Automatic logic with a total contract of $420,050. This project consists of a boiler plant replacements, miscellaneous HVAC replacements, and modifications at Portage Middle School, Brentwood, Fairfield, Indian Village, and North Crest Elementary Schools, and the replacement of the chiller plant at North Crest Elementary School. Primary engineering designed the project. The project will be funded by the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Grant. The existing building automation system controls are proprietary, and Automatic Logic is a single source vendor for this work. Darren is still here to answer any of our questions. It looks like we had another bid from A. Hattersley and Sons, pipe design and piping, and Shambaugh and Sons, and current mechanical was awarded the $2,250,000 project.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Maria. And any questions for Darren?
I got one, but not for Darren. This is ESSER $1, Kathy, is that right?
No.
Or no?
No, these are ESSER 3.
Oh, because it just says ESSER, that's it? Okay. Because we have to the end of this month to spend ESSER $1, right?
Yep.
That's what's checked. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, do we have these boilers ordered?
Depending on what happens tonight, we'll order them tomorrow. But we're not having too many problems with boiler replacements right now.
Oh, that's good.
It's the chillers and the air handlers that we're having the issues with.
Anything else for Darren while he's up there? All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Maria Esser Ventilation Project at Bunch, Indian Village, and rooftop unit at Young Early Childhood.
It is recommended that the board approve the following construction contract for the Esser ventilation project at Bunch, Indian Village, and rooftop unit at Young Early Childhood Center 2023. Current mechanical got this contract for $560,000, and then automated logic for a total contract of $259,690. This project consists of ventilation improvements and exhaust fan replacements at Indian Village, Bunch, and Whitney Young Early Childhood Centers, and the replacement of a rooftop unit at Whitney Young Early Childhood Center. Primary engineering designed the project. The project will be funded by the ESSER grant. Existing building automation controls are proprietary, and Automated Logic is the single source vendor. Darren is here to ask any questions, and at the bottom there you see we received 2 bids, with current mechanical being the lowest bid.
Thank you, Maria. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
Move we approve.
Thank you, Noah.
Second.
Thank you, Raleigh. And any questions for Darren?
Is this also ESSER $3?
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Raleigh Special Education Grants.
It is recommended that the board approve the acceptance of special education grants from the Indiana Department of Education for the school year 2023-24. For FWCS, the Part B special education grant amount for the 23-24 school year is $9,357,960. The preschool special education grant is $326,859. Funds are used to support salary and fringe of approximately 130 staff members. These non-competitive grants are in addition to the Special Education Foundation payment. Questions will be answered by Dr. Nikki Sprunger.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
I move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Raleigh. Thank you, Noah. And do we have questions for Nikki? Seeing there are none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And Noah, second semester extracurricular account reports.
Recommend the board accept the extracurricular account reports for the second semester of the 21-22 school year. Indiana Code 2041-18 requires an accurate account of all money received and expended by extracurricular accounts. Report of the sources of all receipts and the purpose for which the money was expended, and the balance on hand is required to be filed with the School Board of Trustees. All extracurricular semester reports were audited by the business office. The journal ledger summary report of each school's accounts is provided. CFO Kathy Print is here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Noah. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Maria.
Second.
Thank you, Noah. And do we have any questions for Kathy? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and now our Chief Financial Officer, Kathy Friend, will present a report that describes the year 2023 budgets for the Education Fund, Operations Fund, and the two debt funds, debt service and referendum debt. The public budget hearings will be held on September 26, 2022. Board action is scheduled for these budgets on October 10th.
Thank you. Tonight, these are the items that I will be discussing for the 2023 budget. And this is our budget adoption calendar, which is typical for what we've brought to you in the past. Tonight is the presentation, and the next meeting we will have the public hearing, and then on October 10th will be the adoption of the budgets. These are the items that the board will approve during or after this discussion and after the public hearings, and that's the appropriations, the maximum levy, bus replacement plan, the capital projects plan, and the goals for expenditure categories. First of all, I'm going to talk about revenue for 2023. And when we look at revenue, at this point, we know some things and don't know other things. And so, as you know, that for the education fund, the school funding formula is developed every other year. So at this moment in time, I'm working off a formula that was approved in July of 2021, or is effective July of 2021. And so that goes through June 30th of 23. So we have to make a conservative estimate for the second half of 2023 when we're looking at revenue projections, because we don't know what that formula is going to look like yet. So another impact, unknown impact to us, is what enrollment will look like in future years. So we try to look at our revenue picture on a long-term perspective, so we have to consider those things. In the operations fund, the state establishes a formula for how much the maximum levy is that we're allowed to collect. So in 2023, that increase is 5%, and I'll talk about that in a second. What we don't know is what that growth factor will look like for future years, what the impact of the circuit breaker will be in future years, and then any impact of additional legislative changes that could affect our portion of the revenue collected. So when we look at the total revenue picture, this is what we're estimating for 2023, and you can see the comparison to 2022 in the first column. So for the education fund, we're estimating a total of $228 million approximately, and $71 million in the operations fund, for a grand total of just about $300 million. This is a 2% increase over 2022. And I want to just point out one thing on here, because this is the only place that we'll talk about it, and that is the indirect cost revenue up there is a fairly large number. In 2022, it's nearly $8 million. Goes down to about $6.8 million in 2023. Those are dollars that we're allowed to collect from the federal grants that we have to help support the internal workings to make those grants get spent. So for instance, the facilities department, the purchasing department, the payroll department, all of the work that is done there, that's compensation to us for that. But that number is going to slowly go down with 2024 being the last year of the ESSER money. In a typical year, that number would be like $1.5 million. So you can see that that's a significant amount of money that is contributing to our budget at this time that will eventually go down.
What is that rate, 5%?
It depends on the grant, but the ESSER grants actually allow 11%, which is very significant. We do estimate that the transfer for next year will be about $12 million from the education fund to the operations fund, because that's an expectation that part of the revenue we get from the state is needed to support the operations of the district. That's 5.4% of state support, so we're well within the maximum that the state would like us to spend, which is 15%. And we've always been well below what that 15% number, but we intend to stay below that number again.
And that's money in support of operations?
Right. Because the levy is not, the levy that we collect for the operations fund is not enough money to support the entire operations. And when the state did away with the general fund, which was a place we would pay for operational expenses, now those expenses have to be paid from the operations fund, hence the reason for the transfer.
And so the state's saying, we're going to give you education fund dollars, but we only want you to spend no more than 15 cents of those education fund dollars on administrative costs, not in the classroom.
No, well, it's not just administrative costs. Okay. No, it's any operational costs. So for instance, it's utilities for classrooms. It's anything that's operational. So we only can use education money to pay for people that are working with students basically at the schools. So there are other expenses at schools like heating and exactly. So those have to be paid for out of the operations fund, not out of the education fund. So it's not just the school administration is paid for out of the education fund.
Right.
Okay.
School, like your role is paid
No, at the school. Yeah.
Like the principal at Fairfield Elementary is paid out of the education.
Right. The rest of us are all paid for out of the operations or grants or whatever.
But part of that came back from the state because they were concerned about other districts, not us, paying people like you and Dr. Daniel exorbitant salaries apparently, or
I think,
I
think in 2019 when they made this rule, they didn't really know. At 15% is the number they picked. But I think the idea maybe wasn't necessarily so much as that as much as let's make sure we put as much as we can into the schools. And so that's why they established a limit. So I don't know how many schools actually aren't hitting the mark. I have not. I know of a couple of folks that have told me that, but so it must not be a big issue for school districts. So within the school funding formula, these are the two major components of the basic grant, foundation and complexity. And the foundation provides the basic level of support to all students. So this is all students in the state, all get the same amount of money per pupil. So in 2000, for 21-22, that number was $5,995. And in 22-23, it goes up to $62.35, which is a 4% increase. Virtual students are only funded at 85% of foundation. So that's $935 less per student. So it's about a $200,000 impact overall.
Dr. Daniel, you worked in Michigan and Illinois. How does that compare to those states, if you recall off the top of your head?
So total amount towards student, this is much less.
Quite a bit less, Indiana is?
I mean, you have some districts in Illinois, $17,000 per student.
So the complexity portion of the formula is determined for each school district depending on the poverty of their school district. And so that looks at the direct certified rate of benefits that families get within our boundaries, and those are SNAP, TANF, and foster care are the most the largest numbers of those students. So when we look at our complexity dollars, we get about $30 million of complexity dollars. And so those are available to us to spend on things that you wouldn't normally see being spent on in a school district with low poverty. For instance, and I'm going to the bottom now, but like classroom assistants, in a lot of low poverty school districts, they don't have classroom assistants, but we have them throughout to help support our teachers and our students.
Do we have schools without classroom assistants?
Do we have schools without? No.
Every school that needs one has a classroom assistant?
Well, there could be vacancies, but they are assigned, yeah,
So we
they
still
are
have need.
allocated, yeah, they are allocated. One of the things, though, that we have a funding gap in two important areas, and that's English language learners and special education. And so without complexity funding, we would be eating into our foundational dollars. So the complexity funding is really important, not just because we need it for all of our students who have special needs in our schools, but because we have these gaps in funding. And I was talking to Emily earlier today, and this is an important thing to note. You know, I talk about the gap is $4.7 million, but really the gap is much larger because the state is requiring us to shift into a 30 students per teacher. And right now we're at about 40.
Say that again, please.
30 ELL students per ELL teacher.
And the
Okay.
state is
That's where they're recommending us to be.
30?
30, yeah.
ELL, so these people don't speak English, these kids don't speak English, per teacher.
Right. But they're pulled out and provided services outside of the classroom. And I apologize, I don't know if this happens every day or if it's, you know, I don't know if Nikki can help out with that if you have more questions.
It's at the elementary level, it is required 4 times per week.
So we're at about 40 right now, 40 students per teacher. So really, our gap is bigger than $4.7 million. And I think that's important because that we haven't really talked about that as much as what we're budgeting right now is about a $4.7 million gap. But we have been trying to work on that number, and we have brought it down. But it's a significant increase to us to get from 40 to 30 level. So I think as we talk about this with legislators, we need to also explain that gap. In fact, Emily told me today that she was looking at numbers, they were looking at numbers statewide, what that gap is, and it was over $100 million to get every school district in the state to that 30 number. She said most school districts are at about 50. So that's a big area that we need to work on funding for. And the legislature has done some things, but the part the state funds separately is such a small amount of money that even if it's a large increase, it's not enough to make an impact.
Hey, Kathy, is that the only area as far as classroom or student assignment that has a requirement like that, 30 to 1?
Yeah, I am not aware. Well, I don't know about special ed. There may be some.
Yeah,
No.
so special
Okay.
ed, no?
Yeah.
Huh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I presume, Emily left unfortunately, but I presume we're growing in our ELL population in need?
We have been, yeah. Yeah, and we've added more teachers this year to the budget. I mean, the 22-23 school year, we added additional ELL teachers. So, and we did that too in mind with trying to get to the goal. But we have made progress, but we're not there.
So basically what this
Not a
slide,
problem, though, you just find more teachers, right?
Yeah, right.
emergency, Julie, emergency.
Yes, declare an emergency.
So basically, number one, you're saying that we're funding $11.7 million over and above what we're getting, so coming from the education fund or operation fund to help support the ELL and special education. So for us to run the programs we're running now, we are not getting enough funding.
Right.
Period.
Right. Well, what we're doing is we're using money, complexity money that could go to all of our students, and instead we have to use it to fill this gap. So when we look at, and I apologize, I know this looks really small on the screen, and you have a hard copy there that you can look at, but I'm trying to show you how the formula works for complexity as well as some uniqueness to how they get there. The bottom left-hand corner shows you different ways you can look at the poverty in our school district. The first column shows you what the free and reduced lunch rate looks like, or really it's free textbooks in our district because we already have free lunch, but it's like about 66%. When you go to direct certified, this is from a file that we get from the IDOE that tells us which of our kids are on SNAP and TANF and foster care or whatever. So that number is like 56%, if I'm looking right here. And then the PEACH number is actually the number they use in the formula. And the one thing that is eliminated from the second column is Medicaid. So one of the things I'm working on right now is to try to get a handle on what is the Medicaid portion to see if that's enough to explain what that difference is. But this isn't, we're not alone in this question. And as you know, we're working on a study with IUSA to help us get to the bottom of what's going on with complexity funding. But that PEACH box then goes to the PEACH box up at the top and goes through the formula to get to this, to the green column, which is basically how much we get funded right now. And so back in 15-16, we were funded at about $1,300 per student, and that is now down to about $1,100 per student. So we've lost a couple $100 per student in the complexity formula, even though if you look at our direct certified numbers, it looks like we have an increasing number of students receiving state benefits. So
yeah, you know, I think that deserves to be emphasized. You know, our textbook, free textbook percentage has stayed rather consistent over the past, what is that, 7 years?
Yeah.
Direct certified has gone up significantly, like 15 percentage points. But I have a hard time believing that the poverty rate of the students in this district has dropped from what is from 38% to 29% over the past 7 years.
Right.
That is hard to believe.
It is. It is.
I mean, we've talked about this before, the mystery of the state poverty formula.
And they
did you say there's somebody's doing a study on that or something?
Yeah. The Urban Schools Association,
Is there an
is, which
ETA
we're
on
a part
Right.
of. And that's supposed to be done at early November. So.
Wonder if there's any state legislator even understands it.
Unlikely. Maybe the ones I've been drilling this into, I don't know, but
Right,
I've been trying. One thing about the pink numbers, or the peach numbers on there too, is that they aren't an exact reflection of the number with just with Medicaid out or whatever, because they do little tweaks in the formula. Like they'll say it's this, but no lower than what it was there, and this plus 2 times 5 minus, you know, I mean, there's little quirky things that go with it. So it's not even like a real number sometimes, too. It's some manipulation goes on.
But I still contend that there's no way our poverty level actually dropped 9 percentage points over the last 7 years.
Right.
Well, in the conversation I was having with the superintendent before the meeting, this issue of poverty isn't just an urban issue. I've got to believe that there are a number of very poor rural school districts, especially in southern Indiana.
Yeah.
And
right.
That's why
we're not.
I was in Logansport recently. They said 70% of their kids were
on a platform of help those poor urban kids. This is really an issue that characterizes a number of public school children.
And I think that's going to be one good thing about this study, because it doesn't just reflect on urban school districts, it works on everybody in the state.
Right.
And the last report that they, Policy Analytics is doing the study, David Reynolds, who used to be in the Senate Republican Budget Office, he did the last study, and that one really got a lot of legs for us, because we were sitting at a time where potentially complexity could have gone away. And they did kind of stop the bleeding when we used that 2 years ago. So that's why it's important that this report helps us through this next session.
Is he doing this new report?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So Kathy, my question to you is, you've stuck with this these years, and you just mentioned that there's tiny tweaks here and there, and we have to figure out how to balance our budget. And if that study doesn't come through that we understand that, then how do you do your job?
Yeah, I mean, what's tricky is that districts like ours, even though there could be a nice increase in foundation, which others will enjoy around the state, it's negated by the fact that this goes down. And so we can't do as much for our staffs as maybe others can. So
Ken, how long have
That's
you
the
been doing this
difficulty.
job?
Pardon me?
How long have you been doing this job?
23 years.
And I'm sure you talked to peers in roles like yours throughout the state. Have you met anybody who can understand why we've gone down?
No, we're all,
No
no,
one
I mean, we're all sitting in the same boat, wanting to get
no one was-
clarification on this.
No one
Yeah.
has a true, and this
Yeah.
has been going on for a few years now, right?
Well, this is 15-16 was the first year they changed to direct certified. So you can see that first year, it really wasn't off that far. You know, when you looked at what the direct certified was compared to the poverty number that was used. So it kind of felt like, you know, it must be in the neighborhood. So we didn't complain a lot there in the beginning. And then as time went on, you can see that it just started the gap got bigger.
So
So,
do you have an explanation of why they made that change? Do we?
you know what, we advocated for that change, honestly, to direct certified, because there was a strong feeling by the legislature that people were cheating to get the free textbooks. And so they did not believe that percentage, and that weighed in on their thought process for funding complexity. And they didn't, so I was like, well, let's pick a number then that you came up with, because they're the ones that approve everyone who gets direct certified. So us in Indianapolis and a few other school districts went and met with some of the players down there, and we talked about using direct certified instead. And I still think it's really the right thing to do. It's just that how do we get that to be the number that is really used in the complexity formula? So, and even though it started out as a lower number than free textbooks, it didn't mean the total dollar number had to go down. It just needed to be, the formula had to make it work out to the same answer. So, and you can, see it did go up for a little bit. Oh, I should get the number from before 15-16, what that number was. I think it was close, though.
And you've indicated in the past there's concerns about matching names and matching kids and peoples and families, and that's not really clear either, and they don't provide clear and direct information on
That's
that.
still something that's part of the work that the study is going to do too, to find out. We know that there's not a relationship between the IDOE and the FSSA in terms of like the FSSA gives the numbers, gives the direct certified people to the IDOE. And then the IDOE tries to match that with all of the student names in all of the districts in the state. And they really do try to scrub those and try to make matches as best as possible. But there was another school district that did some extensive work on this, and they found that there were quite a few students that didn't make it into the count because of maybe a hyphen was used or a different first name or, something from the time of application until these numbers came out. So that would be ideal. This was one of the things that we've talked about, but it would probably require some big programming changes, is to have, the student number be driving the benefits as well as the IDOE. If those numbers would match, then we wouldn't have this issue. But
Jack, you up for a program, right?
So anyhow, that's what we're contending with, and part of this next legislative session, again, something we'll be talking about.
Bottom line, I'll shut up and move on. We're getting $206 less dollars in this bucket than we did in 2015 and 16.
Right.
And that's flat dollars, that's not including inflationary rates or anything like that.
Right. So this next chart on the bottom left shows you foundation and complexity and the total dollars per student. So, we've gone from $6,248 per student back in 15-16, and now we're up to $7,333. So you can see, though, before the last 2 years of budget, we were getting an average of 1.6% a year. And that's where we were having trouble with the fact that complexity was going down. All of the gains we were getting on the foundation side were eaten up by declines on the complexity side. So we did have, the last budget was really favorable for us, so I gave it a smiley face up there because we got a 4.8% and a 3.4% increase. But, we still have work to do on that complexity issue.
You mentioned you've been doing this 23 years. In the 23 years, do you recall the state having a $6 billion or greater surplus?
No. I remember the year that the state had to cut $300 million from.
Did you ever get that money back?
I don't think so. No. We had to cut $10 million here at Fort Wayne Community Schools when that happened. Okay, so next, this is the enrollment. As of course, enrollment drives, you take those per pupil amounts, and then enrollment drives where we finally end up with our dollars. So these are Friday's numbers. So last year we were actually at 28,937 total enrollment. As of Friday, we were at 28,792, a decrease of 145 students. The official count will be this Friday. But the next section shows you the funded portion. And since preschool is not funded, we have to take that out of the equation. So our preschool numbers did go up this year, so that's part of the number up at the top. When we take preschool out of the equation, we are down 321 students from last year, which is about a 1% decrease. So, I mean, for as large as we are, that's fairly stable, I would say. But, of course, we would like to see those numbers go the other direction.
So we have 942 preschool kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
And some of those are special ed preschool and some of those are gen ed preschool.
And we don't get any
Yeah.
funding from the state for either one?
We don't get any for the gen ed preschool. We do get federal funding for the special ed
But
preschool.
not from the state?
No.
And this is only part-time kindergarten, or pre-K, right?
Right.
We can't offer full day.
Right. Oops. So then another portion of the funding that comes from the state is special education, career and technology, career and technical education honors diploma. So here are the formulas for each one of those. Special education did have a nice increase in this last biennial budget. We got 5% increase the first year, and then on top of that, another 10% increase. So you could say 15%, about 15% increase. But when you're not funded at the level you need to be funded at, we need that to continue. So I hope legislators don't assume that they've done their job with special ed, that we do need to continue to see increases in special education funding. And then I just put a chart in there that shows you what the numbers are for the different exceptionalities. Career and technical ed did not have any changes in their funding. There were a lot of talk about that during that session, but it ended up ultimately staying about the same. And honors diploma, also, the formula just stayed the same.
So the special ed severe of $10,575, that's over and above the foundation and complexity dollars, or is that the total?
That's up over and above.
So we get $17,346
Right.
per child on that?
Yeah.
Do a lot of those kids have one-on-one?
No.
No?
And one of the misnomers of how these are leveled, severe doesn't just mean severe in cognitive ability. These are severe disabilities. These are what we would call low incidence disabilities. We have lower numbers. Your moderate group are your high incidence disabilities, and then you have your speech, language, and pre-K.
So I guess bottom line, Nikki, my question is, we get about 17,346 for our most challenged special ed students. That's a top number I see here, I guess.
I wouldn't say most challenged, I would say the low incidence disabilities.
Well, I guess, what level then do we need one-on-ones? Because I know we have that, and I know
All.
we have a need. All levels?
We're equal opportunity.
Well, I understand, but my point is, I guess, that costs money.
Correct.
And a one-on-one is probably going to be at least $17,346 to staff somebody.
Correct. And I will say, Noah, one of the things that we did, one of the first things I did when I came here is to look at the designation of a one-on-one as opposed to an adult assistant. For example, we just put in today for an adult assistant that will cover 2 students. So we try to minimize those one-to-ones because those are for the students with the most severe behaviors.
But bottom line, I guess, is my question is, do we get enough from the state to cover?
No,
Thank you. That's what I suspected.
nor the federal government.
How much more over and above this is the federal government then?
The
per student?
federal government appropriated in 1974 to pay 30% of special education, and the highest it's ever been is 16%.
If you get a chance, I'd love to get a little feedback on what that is roughly per student, so we
Yeah,
can.
I lobby every year in DC for that money.
Okay, I'm going to move next into the operations fund. And the operations fund, the bulk of the revenue going in there is the property tax. We also have in this fund, because whenever a unit of government gets property tax, they also get excise tax and financial institutions tax and other taxes that are distributed proportionately to all units in the county. So you can see the growth factor the last couple of years. I just put those in there so you could see it was 1.042 in 21, then 1.0442 last year, and then this coming year 1.05 is the growth factor. So that allows us to levy about $63 million in the operations fund, but then we won't collect about $6 million of that because of the circuit breaker. So we'll look at about a $57 million distribution compared to $54 million in 2022. The next chart.
Right, Kathy, this number shows growing. We as a board, we don't control that, right?
No.
We can't
no,
vote on that
no,
up or down? Or?
No, this is just well, you can probably vote it down, but
Oh.
I don't know.
We have a need
I
as
don't know if
presented
you
just
wanna
by
do
Nikki
that.
and you. Thank
Yeah.
you. So.
But this is the maximum amount that we're allowed to raise. And it's by statute how that formula works. So the growth factor is based on the last 5 years of non-farm income growth is where that comes from. So then the next chart just shows you the circuit breaker losses over time since 2009. And that has leveled out, fortunately. But when you count in what I'm estimating for 2023, we would be at about an $88 million loss with tax caps over that period of time. And so that's why we've had to do things like referendums for our capital projects and stuff, because we would not be able to keep our buildings up given this environment.
Could you say it again?
So the reason that we have to do a referendum is because we've lost over $88 million since 2009, and without those referendums, we would not be keeping our buildings up at all. I mean, it would be super difficult to keep our buildings up if we did not have those dollars. So, as you know, we do have, and I'll go into it, we have about $18 million appropriated for the capital projects fund, but that wouldn't touch all of the needs that our buildings have. So when you look at the expenditure side now, red is for education fund, as you see throughout my presentation, and purple will be the operations fund. The state determines how the dollars get spent in each of those funds. We don't just decide that this goes in the operations fund, that goes in the education fund. They decide that for us. And so the words on this next slide give you examples of those things that are in the education fund and the operations fund. And it's consistent throughout the state. We all have the same chart of accounts. That way we can do apples to apples comparisons of spending. So to give you some comparison to how we are spending our money compared to other school districts, and let's focus on the columns that say excluding non-operational in both columns. And non-operational, by the way, includes mostly like debt service. And so that's not an apples to apples comparison throughout the state. So if we just look at those excluding non-operational column, you can see that we spend in 1920, which is the last year the data is available, we spent 75.4% of our dollars on instruction compared to 72.1% in the state. So we're doing well compared to our peers. And the reason I put this up here is because one of the jobs you have in the budget approval process is that you have to approve a resolution that says what our goals are for these categories. And we basically say our goals are to do better than where we are now. So that'll be a resolution you get on the last night.
And what's the difference between the two columns of all versus
the first, the all columns include notice in the non-operational. There's dollars in there as well. So those dollars include things like debt service. And because that's not something that's, I mean, we look better in either case.
Sure.
But it's really not fair, I don't think, to use debt as part of the equation, because like in a growing suburban school district that's building a bunch of buildings, they could have this really high debt service. So that takes that out of the picture and kind of evens out the results then. Okay, so this is the combination of the Education and Operations Fund, which is $309 million, and 73% is for the Education Fund, and 27% is with the Operations Fund. So that's pretty consistent with what we just talked about. But the chart above, before this one, includes all sources of funds, not just these two funds. It includes grants and everything else that we get. So I'm going to go into the Education Fund first, and these are the things that are mostly spent from the Education Fund. Obviously, teachers is the #1 expenditure in the Education Fund. And when you look at it this way, 92% of the budget is spent on people. That could be teachers, that could be classroom assistants, that could be principals, but 92% is on people. And then the remaining portion is spent on other topics like curriculum, assessments, the transfer tuition we pay to Anthus Career Center, which is almost $5 million for students to go to Anthus, those kind of things.
And we're approving this for the 23 calendar year.
Right.
But we have no idea if these numbers are going to be good come July 1, 23, right? Because that's what they pass.
Well, we know what we're going to ask for permission to spend, and then we'll hope that the revenue will not go down. I mean, we were conservative in our revenue projection, so we'll be fine to get through those last 6 months, and if we have to, that'll make an adjustment to 24. But yeah, there is some unknowns here that we have because of not knowing what the school funding formula is. So in the Operations Fund, these are our typical expenditures in the Operations Fund, and when you look at the pie chart for this, you'll see major components here. Capital projects is about 25%, transportation is almost 25%, not quite 25%. Custodial and supplies are a large number, and as you all know, we approved an increase for custodial. And then the next biggest chart then is wages and fringes, and so those are for all the people that don't work in the school building, basically, that support the school district. So that could be Grile, Catalpa, Face Center, all those kind of things. So I'm going to break this down a little bit to the bigger pieces. So this was obviously it had its own fund in the past, the capital projects, but now it's part of the Operations Fund, and it's a significant expenditure, about $18 million, like $18,183, and there you can see how we intend to spend that budget. About half of it is on building improvements, but we also purchase equipment, and we have repairs, so like the whole maintenance and operations, the repair work that they do. Now the department, the employees themselves are not in there except for the skilled craft employees like plumbers and electricians are included in here because that was typical for how the Capital Projects Fund used to operate. So as far as the state is concerned, we now have the requirement, which is, it's not super helpful, I don't think, to you, but we are required to have a 3-year plan, and the 3-year plan only includes things that exceed $10,000. So either projects that are considered capital in nature or capital assets. So from meetings that we had, we gave you a list of things beyond what this $10,000 requirement is. So you have seen what the other projects are on the list. But here is the item that we have to send to the state and you have to approve at the last meeting. So this is posted on our website as required by the state. It's already out there right now. So like I said, this is
posted on our website.
Oh. So you received a list of this too in your binder when we met. Transportation is the next big area, and we have a fleet that we know right now is too big, and Renee is working on figuring out how we're going to reduce that fleet. So I just give you what the current fleet is right now and what service that we're providing. This is a pie of what the current operations is of the transportation department. About 75% of the operation is people. So it's drivers, it's bus assistants, mechanics, and then their fringe benefits is included there. And then the other pieces of the pie represent the maintenance and fuel costs, insurance, and so forth. The next chart shows you the bus replacement budget. And so I would say for 23 is firm at this moment, but, well, I should say firm in terms of what we're going to add. We may reduce more than 42, but at a minimum, I believe Renee's intent is to decrease at least 42. Years 24, 25, 26, and 27 are still going to need some work. She may decide that she will make changes there as well, but at the moment, because this is something we have to provide the state, a 5-year bus replacement budget, this is what we are going to recommend that we provide, but it could be adjusted next year. So the 10 buses are a new model that we don't have right now, yellow buses that, small yellow buses that have lights and arms and don't require a CDL. So Renee is coming up with a strategy for how to use those instead of large buses. And then we'll figure out a way to reduce those 42 buses and generate some revenue to come back to the district.
Great idea.
What timeline do you think she'll have to reviewing this? I mean, if we got over 100 buses we're not using this year, 42 is a good start, but we have more room to go there, it looks like.
Would you like to comment on that? The strategy?
I told her that we should give it another year because Dr. Daniel has tasked us with doing some other major revisions, so it will probably be in the 24-25 school year where we'll know for sure.
How many buses we're going to keep or get rid of?
Yes, we know we're going to significantly reduce the fleet, but until we do these other major issues we have to attend to, she wants to hold on to some of those buses.
I'd like to see if we could move that up to this calendar year, I guess. We should know by Christmas, I would think, how many kids we're moving around, right?
Well, we will know, but I don't know that she wants to reduce them right now.
Well, but for over 100, I mean, that's quite a big number, it seems to me.
It is.
That's just my opinion, but thank you, Charles.
I think, you know, in defense of Renee, she just started in July. And so she's working through this. She absolutely wants to review this plan and reduce the fleet, but she's just trying to get her hands around it and make sure that she makes the right decision when we do it. So next are the debt funds. And we have 2 debt funds. The orange represents the regular debt service funds. The blue represents the referendum debt. So everything above the orange line, those are the things we pay for out of the debt service fund. And the bulk of that is the state technology loans that we bring to the board, the CSF loans and the STAA loans. And we anticipate that we'll continue to borrow like we do on those. And then the referendum debt is based on the schedule of for our 2020, well, for actually the 2020 referendum bond issues are not complete yet. The ones prior to that are all complete and all have debt schedules. So we are doing a refinancing of our 2013 debt service within the next month or so. And when we do that, that's going to adjust our debt schedule for 2023. And so we've left ourselves flexibility in that blue line there to make the adjustment there to make sure that we're managing our debt service rate in the way we want to manage it so that we get to that 0.302 rate that we told taxpayers was our limit. But we do, because assessed value has gone up, it gives us some flexibility to work within that number. We will be looking in the future for what additional debt opportunities we may have for projects that we may have. But we're very cognizant of making sure that we'll keep within that 3028. And there is some activity coming up as far as debt is concerned. For the 2020 referendum, we did do the first and second issues. We have issues 3 through 5, which will be sold starting in 2023. Each time we do a bond issue, our financial advisors help us make sure that we structure it in a way that meets our needs to be at the 0.3028 rate. So it could mean that more debt's up front or in the middle or whatever it takes to make sure that we stay at the 0.3028. And then, as I mentioned, we'll continue with our technology loans. So in summary, this is the grand total of the budgets that we discussed tonight. And overall, the Education Operations Fund budget, this is the expenditure side, is going up 4%. Debt service is going up 12%. Again, that's within managing that tax rate. And so overall, it's a 5% increase in spending. The next chart shows you, we had to advertise on the Indiana Gateway. We don't advertise in the newspaper anymore. So this isn't the exact ad. You can find our ad on the Indiana Gateway, though, if you want to find it. What's in the ad is the first column, which is the recommended appropriations. So that's the budgets that I just shared with you. And then the advertised and adopted levy, the $106 million total, that is the other piece that gets advertised. So we adopt a little bit higher than what we expect it to be, and I've told you this before, it's a strategy all units of government use, because you want to make sure that you don't get caught where you have a levy lower than what you could have had to run your organization. So it very likely will be the $97 million, and we won't collect $6 million of that. But we say we want to raise the $97 million. And you can see that our tax rate is actually going to go down. On the right-hand side, it looks like it'll be about a 3% decrease in our tax rate. And we're benefiting, even though like the levy's going up 5% in the operations fund, we're benefiting from the fact that assessed value did go up in our community. So, and then to finish things off, I'm just going to give you a little update on COVID. Some thought that this might be helpful. These slides were same as what I used last year, just a reminder what COVID is not for. It's not to fill in the gaps for current expenditures or stabilizing our cash balance, but it's intended to meet the guidelines of the grant requirements, and that is learning gaps for students, technology, facilities, and all those things. So the total revenue that we are receiving that is coming to FWCS is about $156 million. $1.8 million of the amount that we were awarded goes to the non-public schools. So we're actually administering $158 million in total. And then this is our spending plan, and about 54% of the spending plan is for facilities. So that's for air quality and windows and things that are allowed under ESSER. And then the next largest thing, the gold, 19% is spent on academic supports.
Do we have any schools not being touched by ESSER dollars? Physical property, Darren? Every single school, our 61 buildings, is getting a sprinkle of ESSER dollar dust.
Correct.
So after all of that, this is pretty boring budget, I guess I'd say. These are the key takeaways. Our enrollment is maintaining. It's gone down a little bit, but it's still maintaining. Budget increased 4%, and that is in line with the revenue increase that we got. Bus replacement is under review for reduction. Debt funds will maintain our rate of 0.3028. Expected tax decrease, and then our COVID spending's on track. So next steps are those other dates on the calendar, and that's all I have. Any other questions?
3 comments. Thank you for the work you do and your team. Very thorough, and appreciate the conversation we had up here. I wanted to make sure that people understand one significant item here, and that's our tax rate going down. And I know from time to time there's questions about the city of Fort Wayne providing tax incremental financing to induce businesses to expand or relocate here. And Raleigh and I sit on redevelopment, and we hear these requests all the time, and some concerned as to whether it's prudent and wise that we would provide those types of incentives. Here's the proof. And I think what we saw coming into this meeting was the value of this community increasing by 12 and 13%. That's primarily based on the investment that businesses are making in Fort Wayne. We can see it. We can see the downtown changing. But this is proof that the value of our community is rising, and as a result, our tax rate is going down. Secondly, the story that I shared with Kathy as we were getting our budget review was about the time the board did not approve the budget, the superintendent's request. And this was about 30 years ago when we had Dr. Daniel, an interim superintendent, and I think he got bad advice from his team at the time. This was before Kathy was on board. This was before Kathy was on board. But she mentioned in the capital projects funds what had a different name at the time. But in that budget is money for skilled craft, the people that repair and keep our buildings in good shape. The superintendent was told, and that needed to be in the general budget. Well, if we approved that recommendation, it would have cost us 25 classroom teachers. And so we said no, we voted it down. And so we had to have a second school board meeting, special emergency meeting.
Ooh, did you declare an emergency?
We may have declared an emergency, but we then came back with the revised numbers as the board had directed and put the skilled craft salaries back into capital projects, and we passed the budget then. But it's the only time in my memory that we did not approve the budget as presented to us.
You know, you need to start writing all this down, Steve.
I'd like to take a minute and thank you, Kathy and Rosie, even though we missed your smiling face at our planning session on this. I know it's a lot of work, and I appreciate the feedback and the thoughts. I'd also like to compliment the people I get to serve on for the next 2 years, and hopefully another one, Maria, Steve, and Julie, Ann, and Raleigh too. This is my second session, but I think this shows, and Kathy for 23 years, and Dr. Daniel for 2, and Dr. Robinson before that, good stewardship of the dollars that we're entrusted with. As Steve mentioned, the tax rate is going down. I asked Kathy offline in reviewing this process, well, we have control over and we have no control over, and basically we only have control over our debt, and everything else comes to us from the state or federal government. So we have absolutely no say in taxation that way, but we do receive benefit from that. The other thing I'd be remiss to mention, if I try to point out, picking on Nikki a little bit too tonight, is we have need, and what we're getting is not enough. We appreciate what the state did last year, or excuse me, last budget cycle. It was phenomenal as compared to the prior 10 years. We're in an upcoming legislative session next year where there's going to be a budget session again, and the need has not gone away. And we're in a state with a $6 billion surplus. I don't want to pay any more taxes than the next person, but I want great schools, I want great fire departments, I want great police departments, and great supports. And so I encourage the legislators to take a look at this budget. We are the biggest district in the state. I think we've shown that we are acting fiscally responsible, but we could still use their help. I'll shut up with that.
I just want to thank Kathy and your team. Obviously, we are performing miracles every day, so thank you to your team for getting this all figured out. But as Dr. Daniel mentioned, in Illinois, there were some school districts that were spending $17,000 per pupil, and I think I read recently that Indiana is funded, or we rank 41st in funding out of 50 states, and that definitely isn't something to be proud of. And I think that this presentation shows that we work at a deficit in lots of different buckets in our school district, and we make miracles happen every day. However, it's difficult, and we shouldn't be 41st out of 50 states in public school funding. And so when we show this budget and we show that it is a lot of money, also realize that it is a drop in the bucket as compared to what other states are spending on public education. And so, like Noah mentioned, we don't want to pay more in taxes. However, I am all for good schools, good roads, police and fire departments. So I just want everyone to realize the magic that this district does on a daily basis with the resources that we have. So thank you again, Kathy, to you and your team, and to everyone, Darren, for making all these major improvements and making our buildings beautiful, and the curriculum department for all of the support that you give our students. Clearly, every department is working with smaller budgets than other states, and so thank you for all of the wonderful work that you do on a daily basis for our students with the small budgets. I say small budgets, but someone was going to look at that and be like, you have millions of dollars. But we have a lot of students as well. So thank you again to everyone in our district for the miracles that you perform every day.
Well said. Anybody else?
I'm glad that Maria brought up Darren, and thank you for the renovations. But along with that, I think that Kathy mentioned that since 2009, we've lost $88 million. So we are thankful also to our community who supported those referendums to be able to keep those buildings up to code and up to speed. I've been in cities that are similar to our size that have their public school districts and their schools are in disarray. And I am very proud of our schools and what we've done with that referendum money, and to keep them at the level that they are, and this safe, secure, almost all fully air conditioned, I believe, when the rest of those parts and pieces come in. But I do commend Darren and his team, as well as Kathy and her team, for being great stewards of that money and putting that towards the facilities that our children use every day and our employees use every day. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Kathy and Rosie and your staff. Do a great job every year, and Darren and his staff. I mean, any organization is only as good as the people in it. And I think that we in Fort Wayne Community Schools are very, very blessed to have so many very competent and professional people in every department. And I also think it's important to note, and you mentioned this, but when we campaigned for that referendum in 2020, we promised a certain tax rate, and sometimes, promises aren't always met, but we have kept ours. Our tax rate is not going to be any higher than what we promised 4 years ago. And like Jennifer said, we're grateful that 70% of our community voted yes in 2020.
And Julie, wasn't that the original
provide,
referendum? Wasn't
I'm
that,
sorry?
wasn't that commitment in the original referendum way back when? Yeah, so
In 2012, the very same rate, was it? Okay. Well, that's impressive. That's even more impressive. Yeah. But again, thank you to the community too that allows us to provide the type of educational environments that allow students to succeed.
All right. Well, I think I'll just say ditto. How about you, Raleigh? Thank you. Yeah, what they said. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, I guess we're ready for board comments, if you have any more.
I do not. Thank you.
I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but we get this newsletter that Indiana Education Insight. Evidently, Forbes has a top 100, they have a lot of top 100s, but this one is the top 100 of America's best state employers. And out of the entire country, there were 3 districts in Indiana that made the top 100. Monroe County, Fort Wayne Community Schools, and Evansville.
Yay.
So, congratulations to everyone. I don't know, I don't take Forbes, I don't know what their criteria were, but I second their nomination. And I also want to thank Dr. Daniel and your staff for coming up with an Employee of the Year award. I really think that's significant. And Sharon McGee mentioned that when she was a student, it was some of the, I think she mentioned the media center person and someone else, I didn't catch it.
Coach.
Yeah, but every employee in our district has such an impact on students, from the bus drivers who may meet them first thing in the morning, to custodial staff sometimes, certainly office staff and school assistants and cafeteria workers. Every employee definitely has an impact on students. And I could tell how proud she was of her job, and she saw her job as a service. It's a community service. And that's basically what a community school is. It's a collection of public servants, in my opinion. So I think that was a really great idea, and supplement the Teacher of the Year award. So?
Well, I'll go, I wasn't going to say this, but I think that we also had another top 10 last week, and I believe it was the Wayne Generals football team.
I was going to
Oh,
talk
yeah,
about that.
that's right.
I'm sorry, stole
That's
it.
all right.
Wasn't even on my list, but when you started hitting top 10s, that came to mind. Maybe you'll be able to hit on the people's names specifically, but I know that the Wayne football team did make the ESPN's top 10 the number one slot for the play of the game, and that was pretty exciting to see one of our schools on the national news, ESPN. So congratulations to the Wayne Generals and the quarterback and the...
Christian Trimble and Lamarian Nelson.
There you go.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Quick, another sports shout out just happens to go to my girls golf team, who did finish second in the SAC conference tournament this past Saturday.
Nicely done.
To Dwenger Saints, one couple behind Dwenger Saints, but they do have some amazing girls on that team too. So sectionals will be coming up already, the first sectional of the year for the girls sports. So go Panthers. And that's it.
I don't have any additional comments.
Thank you.
I have no comments tonight.
The only thing I had, and Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, but I counted about $66 million of commitments we've made to local construction companies in our budgets we approved. I started adding that up, and then Nikki's group was next. I was going to ask you about that. Well, 50 of it was the Hagerman contract, and we just did a $50,000 additional change to that.
I would say off the top, at least 85% to 90% of our annual budget of all these renovations go to local contractors.
And what is our annual budget? Even though Kathy just went over, I just forget.
Just in the CPP, it's around $9 million. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a big believer in circular flow of money. So the tax dollars that get spent, that come here, we're putting it back in the community. So $66 million, and say on the worst case 85%, that's a pretty good number there. So I applaud our district and your efforts, Darren, and your team on that. That automated logic I hear is a great product, but man, not in Fort Wayne. So if we can crack that nut, that'd be cool. So that's all I have.
Dr. Daniel?
So I will also say we're very fortunate to have a CFO such as Kathy recognized across the state, and when people have questions, they come to Kathy. So, but with that also, as we talk about our budget, it becomes more and more obvious because of shortfalls, we have to continuously look for private partnerships. So as we look for public and private partnerships moving us forward, we'll have to continue to do that. So just so we're aware of that. And I think we're moving down that path and doing some really amazing things in that space. Hopefully the next several board meetings, perhaps, we'll have some announcements and what's happening at AMP Lab and with some of the support of AMP Lab, but also the energy that we're seeing. For instance, just this past Saturday, we had Wayne High School who went to Levon Scott Academy, and also the Bridge of Grace, which is a neighbor across the street. And there we had high school students working with elementary kids, mentoring process, but cleaning up the school, also painting fences and so forth in the neighborhood playground. But even those types of, I'll just say, grassroots of volunteers coming forward, that reflects Fort Wayne Community Schools. And that reflects the city of Fort Wayne and what we do to go above and beyond to help others. And that's so very, very important. So thank you again, Kathy, for an excellent presentation. This is like the fourth time I've seen it. So, but I can tell you, every time it's a little different. But she adds, yeah, she does an excellent job. But also thank you for people like Mr. Hauser and Mrs. Kennedy at those two buildings, and how we can perhaps take that beyond just one neighborhood, but right now one neighborhood at a time. So thank you.
And that reminds me, I need to plug again, since I don't do it enough, our Study Connection and Lunch Buddies program. I've been a lunch buddy since my girl was in 3rd grade, and she was just finished 5th grade. And when she cries at the last day of our lunch buddy thing, you just feel really horrible that, because the Big Brothers Big Sisters program doesn't go on to middle school. But fortunately, with Fort Wayne Community Schools, I was able to extend our lunch meetings, and so now I can see my buddy in middle school. So I was thankful for that. But of course, we could always use more lunch buddies or mentors or whatever you're going to call them, and Study Connection, the after-school program. You know, I always say that if you can't do the Study Connection, because that's one day a week, a set time, set day, Lunch Buddy is a great alternative because it is more flexible. You can change your day. If you can't make it, you don't need to get a sub if you're not going to be there, or send your kid home or whatever, like we do in Study Connection sometimes. So I also have the ESPN video on my Facebook page if you haven't seen that yet, but it's pretty incredible. But you need to see it on the big screen to see what they really did. And also, this seems like ages ago, but A Taste of the Arts takes place in downtown Fort Wayne. It's one of my favorite events that happens in downtown Fort Wayne, and I checked out all the different locations of the performances and things like that. But I did get to see Memorial Park perform. Their 7th and 8th grade jazz band performed at Promenade Park. And what was so impressive to me was that every kid had a solo. And I just thought that was amazing, because back in the olden days when I was in school, you only picked those 1 or 2 kids every time you got that solo. And, whether they're amazing or not, it was just great that they each had that opportunity to go in front of an audience by themselves and play their instrument. So that was really neat to see. And that is all I have. Is there a motion on the floor to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Maria, thank you, Noah. All in favor?
Aye.